now moment, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with you as always. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here. And we just ask that you bring an open mind and an open heart to your listening experience. And to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you will be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, if you're a longtime P-Head listener, you know I have been diligently working on producing episodes for my new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video talk show, Optimistic. Well, after a year plus in the making, I am thrilled to announce that we will be releasing Season 1's episodes weekly beginning March 15th, and I'm asking for your help to spread the love and to let your friends and family know about Optimistic when it's released. In exchange for taking a minute to share our Episode 1 teaser video on March 15th, or whenever you're hearing this, up through the end of April, we're giving you monthly memberships to not one, but two consciousness-expansive online content portals from two of my very favorite teachers and healers that are valued at over $50 a month, as well as entering your name into a drawing to win a free week at the Mystic Manor for a retreat immersion valued at $2,950, where the winner will be chosen in April. Otherwise, if you're interested in hearing more details about the rewards you'll receive for supporting, we'll send you a video that goes into detail when you text the word Mystic to the number 22999. You can also go to optimistic.tv to see several other videos, including the Optimistic show trailer and two videos that discuss the week-long retreat immersion, as well as details of what the Mystic Manor immersion entails and how you can book a week to come stay with us, even if you don't win the raffle. All right, all you positive heads. On this week's Soul Share episode, I'm very excited to have Matt McKibbin here with me on the show. Matt is the co-founder of AMMA Healing Products, co-founder of DecentraNet, a transformative technology advisory and investment firm. He's also been deeply dedicated to the medicinal value and healing power of plants since he discovered the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, or MAPS, who we actually had the pleasure of having Rick Doblin on here a while back, several years ago now, who runs MAPS, and excited to dive in with you today, Matt. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me on, Brendan. I really appreciate it. I always kind of say, you have to be able to say Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies 5 times fast before you're up to meet Rick, or something like that.
I think I just totally failed on number one, so we'll have to work on that.
No, you did a good job. You did it.
I think you have to eat like an eighth of mushrooms, and then you can say it 100 times without flinching.
Right. That's one of the gifts that the mushrooms give you is making sure you can say they're one of their creators, one of their champions better.
Exactly. Well, excited to have you, my friend. I'd like to start with the same question I always open up with. And the question is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
I would say my passion is upgrading human consciousness. That's been something that has been the way I've been describing it for a little bit while now, and it's become clearer and clearer. So as much as we can do to upgrade everyone around us, whether it's through plant medicines, just whether it's through regular types of meditation, whether it's just being there to kind of listen to someone when they're having a bad day. It's just kind of upgrading everyone around you as much as possible.
Yeah. I think you're 111% right. It's the more you can help everyone around you, the more you help yourself. Mm-hmm. And the reason being, it's all extensions of you, I believe. And so I think this is the path to getting, if we help enough people get what they want, then we get what we want, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, my healing is your healing, is everyone's healing, kind of thing. And the more that you give in the universe, the more that you kind of get. Or the universe, As I saw on your website, I thought that was one of the coolest little things. I guess, sayings about you are the creator of the universe, but putting the you in there.
Yeah, right. The YO universe.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So, if you would give us a little backstory, I'd love to hear, uh, whatever you feel is relevant to share regarding to, your past, where you came from, how you ended up on this path that you're currently on.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to. I ended up. I guess we'll just kind of go back to like undergrad. Like I got a degree in physics, but just because I was really curious about the universe, I liked math and I liked science. I figured it would like teach me how to critically think in a lot of different ways. And in that kind of degree, was definitely not the greatest physicist in the world. There were also really smart people around me. Like one of the people that I always say, like I kind of, cheated off of a little bit, on the homeworks and take home tests, he was part of the team that helped discover gravitational waves or measure those. So I was like, that was a good
Oh well.
person to like, cheat off of a little bit.
Yeah,
Uh,
you think?
but from that, like, you're not afraid of a lot of math. You're taking a look at the world. I graduated in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and everything, the financial world collapsed and crashed. And I was taking a look at, what are they doing? Like, oh, they're printing $1 trillion and giving it to the banks. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, what do you mean you're printing $1 trillion? Like, most people can't even conceptualize what a trillion means. Like, that number is
Right.
really big, like really,
Right.
really, really, really big. And like, in the physics stuff, you have to use like 1 times 10 to the power of 12, right? And then wait a minute, they're gonna be printing that and giving it to their friends. That's crazy.
Yeah. Right.
And so just kind of made me question, like, what is money and how does this work, and like, where are we going? And that kind of made me dive into a lot of like libertarian kind of philosophy and like non-violence, like, why is society organized in such a way that we have like this top-down hierarchical institution that like forces everyone to do things at the and then it made me look at money, which ultimately uh, made me really look into Bitcoin as a free, separate from the government type of money on the internet.
Right.
Um, and one of the coolest like serendipity kind of uh, synchronicity kind of things was when I really started looking at Bitcoin in the end of 2012. So it was actually um, it was December 21st, 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar,
Oh,
or
wow.
right. I
Good
was
day to choose.
right. I was co-hosting a podcast with my friend, like a libertarian podcast, and he was interviewing one of the founders of Armory Wallet, which was an old one of the first Bitcoin wallets. And so this guy was describing to us, like in non-technical terms, all these things, like what a blockchain was, how this kind of worked. And so I, got to learn tremendous amount about what this kind of free separation of money is, like the internet of money. Like I was really worried about the financial system in general. And I kind of like said, okay, well, we could potentially go build stuff on this that is like, we don't need to worry about the old system. Let's just go build on new system stuff.
Right.
And coincidentally, that night also I got to try DMT for the first time in my life. So
Wow.
end of the Mayan
You
calendar,
really did the Mayan calendar right,
right?
bro.
Right. The crypto party. And I got to try DMT for the first time. I had been really big fan of like Graham Hancock and all of his kind of podcasts and as an author and all of that. So um, I think that was probably one of the biggest like synchronicity moments of this past decade there. And from there, I had gone to grad school prior to that, and I worked at a nuclear facility helping get rid of depleted uranium stuff as my first job out of grad school, but was definitely not
Wow.
passionate about any of that. It was just kind of a job, and dressing out in
Right.
level A suits with a respirator. So like level A's are like the most advanced suits. Like they have the full air for yourself and a big suit. And we were getting rid of depleted uranium. So that was my first job out of grad school.
Wow, that's very similar to my first job washing dishes at a restaurant.
I mean, it's really like you could have a lot of damage. You need personal protective equipment. There's probably
You
a lot of
needed personal
fumes.
protective equipment
Right.
too. I remember coming home and I was like covered in like goo from all the dishes
All
that
the
were like they bring buckets of like trash cans of giant pots and pans,
Oh
and me
God.
and my friend were like 15, and we'd be like we were like covered in the grossest slime by the time we left after a 6-hour shift. So
Dude,
I think my job might have been more
I
dangerous.
mean, maybe, especially the heat of some of those dishwashers. I always say one of my brothers was a dishwasher, and he doesn't his first job in like so he's 16, 17 or whatever. But he doesn't feel a lot of heat on his fingertips. And he's like, "Oh, well, you just have to be a dishwasher for a couple of years." And I was like, "Oh, you mean you have nerve damage, right?"
Yeah,
Like, I was
there's a
like,
term for
there's
that.
a term for that. It's called peripheral nerve damage, and you might have damaged your things from putting your hands in really hot water. Um, uh, but I always tease him about it.
Whatever it takes to get the job done.
Yeah. But yeah, we were getting rid of that, making hydrofluoric acid. So if you get enough hydrofluoric acid to cover the palm of your hand, like surface area wise, you die within 24 hours. It's like really hazardous
Wow.
stuff. Um, and yeah, I got rid of that. Got out of that job as quick, like within a year and a half, because I didn't want to do that anymore. And yeah, moved to DC. Did that kind of in 2012. Did that. Time's not linear, so clearly I'm not going in a linear fashion here. But
Why would you?
and that was really what Bitcoin was really what I was like. All right, well, this is what I want to do in the world because I feel like it's solving all of the transparency problems. I don't need to worry about the $20 trillion worth of debt that the United States government has. I don't want to support like I didn't want to support like all the wars and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. It was like kind of an activism kind of thing, but it was like a tool. Bitcoin was for me was a tool for that activism in a really directed way. Um,
Right.
to support that. And so I ran the DC Bitcoin meetup from there, starting to become an entrepreneur as much as I could. I was running a podcast for a couple of years called Liberty Panacea with one of my brothers. Um, and and that was really, really like dove into like what is money and why is this important? Um, and then from there, started, working on different types of startups, understood that this was just more than money too, that you can have a protocol for money on the internet, but you can also start having governance around those assets, around the money. So we could
Right.
eventually, do our governance institutions on top of these and make sure that they're transparent and that they're I say uncorruptible, but they're not human in the sense that like your public servant is going to do what the code says it's going to do, not or your institution for governance can be a platform that you can see everything that's going on at all times and is transparent, versus what we have now, which is everyone's kind of seeing how corrupt some of the institutions are with like the voting and the DNC primaries and all that.
Right.
And then yeah, the psychedelics portion of it, I really, I said, tried the DMT, was really interested in learning more about different types of substances and their healing powers. And I would say that like MDMA was one of the ones that like really had a profound effect on me. I think it allowed me to communicate in a much more empathetic way. It allowed me to
Yeah.
empathize with
Total
people.
heart opener.
Yeah, right. And come up, I came up with some Bitcoin Valentines one year. There we were all kind of hanging out on Valentine's Day, and we went to a rave, and like they became kind of like semi-famous on some of the things like your love is the only thing which can decrypt the private keys to my heart, kind of thing. Or baby, there won't be any finalizing early when we transact in the dark net. And so,
Oh, my brother.
but when I first found that these types of substances, I was like, why aren't there clinics like everywhere, all over the place that are giving these to people and helping them heal? Just because I knew from my own healing that this was possible. And I knew that most of the drug war kind of stories were absolute crap. It was just not a real thing. Because you take a look at all of the studies, like, MDMA puts holes in your brain kind of
Right.
thing. And it was like, well, go look at the actual scientific studies and tell me, oh, okay, they gave rats 100 times their body weight some MDMA,
Yeah.
and it put
Right.
a
Right.
hole in
Right.
their
Right.
brain, right? It's like, okay, well, that's not real. So
Yeah. Right. Right. Right.
and so it's like, all right, well, why is this meme here? Why does everyone believe this? And I just, like, I didn't reach out to Maps. I didn't really get to do much. And then, a couple years later, been doing more and more blockchain things, because that was investing in different types of protocols like Ethereum and MadeSafe and storage and all the early ones. And, finding my role as kind of the evangelist for these things and explaining these in relatable ways to people. I'm not a developer, couldn't code my way out of a paper box. But I really liked explaining like complex technology to other people that had never kind of seen it before.
Right.
One of the conference, like, we're getting closer to this decade here, the conference that I did called D10E, which like Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the biggest venture capital firms, they've got a numeronym. A16Z is their podcast, right? So D10E means decentralize, and it's basically the first letter, the number of letters in between, and then the last letter. And so we did this conference and ran around the world, and it was designed to get like the blockchain people talking to the sharing economy people, talking to the future of work people, and then we had a fourth vertical, which was disruptive tech and culture, which means anything I wanted to put in there. And we got to actually have Maps. So one of the people from Maps come and talk on that portion, like disrupting psychotherapy and disrupting psychiatry. And so that was like the first time that I had actually could put all these different types of people in the same room for content. This was in 2016. Kind of the crypto boom, ICO kind of ran around the world for, I was decentralized. I gave up everything I owned and had a backpack and a suitcase, and ran around the world for a couple of years. And then the second time that I really wanted to bring like the blockchain and the psychedelics kind of thing together, I met Rick Doblin in Tel Aviv. We had thrown a blockchain conference there, and someone was like, "Hey, do you want to go have lunch with Rick Doblin from Maps?" And I was like, "My hero? Are you kidding me? This is going to be amazing."
Yeah.
And so we got to go do that, and I was like, all right, man, like we should throw for the next event, we should throw a like crypto psychedelic like fundraiser for Maps. Like there's all these in 2017, there's all these like new millionaires and people that had bought some Bitcoin back in the day and now had a couple $1,000,000 just because they bought $500 or $1,000 worth of something. And I was like, well, let's get them to donate to Maps. So we threw the crypto psychedelic cruise in San Francisco, and basically just put a bunch of all these people together. We had visionary art, we had all that kind of stuff, and tried to get them to donate. I think we raised a little bit of money for it, but it was more about putting all the people and talking to each other.
Right. Right.
And then we did one other event, which was the cryptopsychedelic.com, which it ended up being like the peak of like the crypto boom kind of thing. Like Pineapple Fund was donating millions and millions of dollars to Maps, and it was my billion seconds party. So when you turn 31.7 years old,
my billion seconds party.
1 billion seconds old on the planet. And
I love
so you
that.
can calculate how like to the second, right, or to the plus or minus 60 seconds, right? When you turn 1 billion seconds. And so mine was February 2nd or 3rd of 2018. And so we decided to throw a crypto psychedelic event there. We invited all these like Um, we invited all these like kind of shamans and neuroscientists and psychedelic scientists, and then we invited all these like kind of blockchain people, and we said, all right, well, what do these people have in common? Let's find out an event and a big party, of course, at the end,
Yeah.
down in Tulum, and and so that kind of crypto psychedelic series was born. Yeah, I don't know. That was like kind of all over the place, but just some of the things that I've done over the past decade that have kind of led me to where I am now and what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's super, super helpful and insightful. So, I find it really fascinating how these two worlds sort of are mashing up in a way. And it's like the whole transformational community is so, it seems like it's obviously the crypto thing is not at the frenzied level it was a few years ago. And, the first thing that comes up for me, and I'm the farthest thing from an expert, right? But I absolutely love the idea of blockchain and, what it represents in the world. And, one of the things that comes up for me is, okay, when and where do we get to see it actually being, implemented and utilized in creating a positive, ripple of impact, if you will. So that's, I guess, my first question to you as someone who has your finger on the pulse much more so than I do is, we've seen all these different, things emerging in the last few years. Are there some out there that are now being used in a way like, for example, I know Ethereum, of course, being like the super the Beatles of Bitcoin. It's like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones or whatever, Bitcoin and Ethereum. So is Ethereum, and I know Bitcoin's kind of like its own thing. Is Ethereum being utilized in any way now that is like causing, it's really revolutionizing any particular industry or space?
Yeah. So I like to take it back a little bit. So yeah, Ethereum is definitely being used there's a one of the larger developer bases that's building decentralized applications or dApps on top of it for a lot of different industries.
Maybe you could even, just sorry to cut you off, but maybe you could even there may be someone tuning in who's like knows little to nothing, even less than me, about all this stuff. So maybe you could just give your very high level, blockchain, how Ethereum works versus Bitcoin, kind of,
I like
summarized as quickly as
Uber
possible.
Driver explanation.
Oh, okay,
you
good.
always get into an Uber. And then they go, oh, what do you do? And you're like, oh, I work in Bitcoin.
Yep.
And they're like, what's that? And you're like, all right.
Yeah.
I have 5
Here
minutes to describe this in a way. So no, so in my explanation of what this stuff is, I go back to the beginning of the internet, actually. So the beginning of the internet, we have protocols. We have ways that we can all communicate with each other. We have of sending information from one computer to another. So TCP/IP, the transmission control protocol, internet protocol. Everyone knows what their IP address, like they've used that term before, and that's the address that your device has. And so it takes whatever information you're going to, divides it up into packets, and then says, all right, on the connection of all these computers, send those packets of information to this other IP address, and then you can read that. So like the first app was like, an instant message, right? On a network of computers. We have HTTP, and that's for websites, hypertext transfer protocol. And we've built all these crazy applications on top of this protocol that everyone's following the same, rules on. We have SMTP for email, right? Which is simple. And everyone like Yahoo and AOL and Gmail and Hotmail and all these massive companies built really easy to use applications for this protocol. Those are information exchange protocols, and there's a lot more of them on the internet. We've never had a protocol for money on the internet that's native to the internet. We have banks, and we have ACH, and we have all these centralized ones that take tons of fees, and there's all these middlemen, and they're the ones that are keeping the accounting ledger for you, and you have to trust them, and that doesn't always work out. Right. And so Bitcoin was the first protocol that allowed for a native value exchange on the internet without a central intermediary saying this is the history that you have to follow. And the first app of that was a unit of account that we could send back and forth to each other, and start trading and start creating markets for. And that's just kind of the first app of the Internet of Money, which is a big, it's a big thing to say, the Internet of Information and then the Internet of Money. And that was invented, 10 years ago, the Internet of Money. And it took the internet, 30, 40 years to really take hold. And so if you think about Bitcoin as being, I can send a unit of account, I can maybe record a piece of information and like record an imprint or a fingerprint, a hash is what they call it, of that information onto the blockchain. And then if I have that information 10 years down the road, I can compare the hashes and say, hey, I'm 100% mathematically certain that this piece of information is the same as it was 10 years ago. And like, that's a pretty big deal because you don't normally have a way of like independently mathematically verifying that some information is the same. You have to trust other people. With Ethereum, they said, okay, cool, we can send one things. We want to create what's called a smart contract, which is an if-then statement around what the money does or what the value does and governance around it. So the simplest form of a smart contract is a vending machine, honestly. And so I put $1 into the vending machine. I hit B5. I want to get a Snickers bar out, right? The Snickers bar. I'm trusting that the code of the vending machine is going to give me that Snickers bar. Otherwise, I'm out $1 and like I might punch the vending machine. I don't know.
Next thing you know, you got a pack of bugles.
And so I'm trusting that the code is going to do, like, if I put $1 in and hit B5, it gives me a Snickers bar, right? And so a smart contract is essentially doing that, but on code that everyone can read and understand exactly what's going to happen when you do it. So if I want to do some sort of escrow service, or I want to do some sort of business with someone around the world, I say, okay, cool, let's use this smart contract where I put my money into it, you send me the thing. When I when I get the thing, the money will be released to you, and you don't have to trust me that this is going to happen because you can read the code too. And I'm not running the code, and you're not running the code, and we're not like, we don't have to trust anyone else. It's this network that's running the code, and we know how it's going to execute. And so the simplest forms of that, right, is different types of business logic. The ICO boom, the Ethereum, no one really cared much about Ethereum. They were very negative on it until ERC20 came about, which is, I can create my own token and I can issue it, and hopefully people will give me lots of money if I market it well enough. And that was like that was the first killer. That was the killer app of Ethereum, was I can have early stage capital formation from anyone around the world to fund my idea. And I give them this token, which probably is not going to be worth anything, but I have the money, and people raise tens, hundreds of millions of dollars on ideas, because, there was a lot of speculation, but there was also a lot of like, positive, like, oh my God, well, if they actually are successful in building this, it's going to be amazing. And there's a lot of other than platforms that are doing smart contracts, so like EOS or Tezos or, Tron, a million other ones that popped up, that some have great technical merits, some have not ones, but the concept of building a platform for automated smart contracts was then born. And in the back, in the Ethereum like beginning days, they were like, all right, this is a lot of like very, obviously libertarian kind of people, and they're like, all right, well, we can automate all the government functions on top of this, it's going to be amazing. And that was kind of the rhetoric that was going on for it. And so to answer your question more about like the impact of this, we're really early still in doing this. There's still billions of people on the planet that don't have financial inclusion, that don't have, I say a bank account, but don't have the ability to trade in a reliable way with each other or with other people around the world.
Right.
Many currencies are devalued by their governments, and you're not allowed to. They have capital control, so you're not allowed to use other people's currencies. There, you're not allowed to get money out of the country, and cryptocurrencies, the internet of money. It's not for me and you, really. I mean, we know how to use it. We're like adept at the internet, but like it's for we have a piece of plastic in our pocket that like I can go buy anything I want with this piece of plastic, right? I have a currency that still everyone in the world wants more of the currency that I have in my pocket. So there's a privilege there. So it's for the billions of people that literally don't have any of that, and they don't have a reliable form of money in their arbitrary geographical boundary called their state, that somehow they have to use some other form of money in that arbitrary geographical boundary, and they're not allowed to use. So Bitcoin cuts through that, or cryptocurrencies cut through that. One other kind of really good analogy that I like to say in a lot of my talks is we're going through like a monetary reformation. And so if we go back to like the religious reformation, what do we do to Christianity? We Martin Luther translated it into German. So in software terms, he open sourced it, right? And then he forked it, which in software terms, you're taking the code and you're trying it on your own. So we open sourced and forked Christianity. And there was a lot of violence. So hopefully there's not that much violence in this one. But people were able to translate and read, the Bible for the first time out of Latin, and they can try it out. The Catholic Church still exists. You just don't have to use them. And you can, even better, you can be your own spiritual, meditator and thing. So we're going through a monetary reformation here, where we're able to create our own forms of value. We've open sourced and forked the institution of money. And central banks are still going to exist. We just will probably not have to use them if we're successful. And we're only 10 years into that. So and the printing press obviously had a really big effect on the open source and forking of Christianity, the religious reformation. And so blockchains are and these networks of money are essentially the printing press for the monetary reformation.
Right. Cool. Yeah, that really helps to, I think, put it into perspective for people, how fledgling this whole thing truly is still.
Yeah. And I mean, I see, especially if you're paying attention, you see things being done on these every single day that may not get cut through the noise of like people really focusing on what the price is. And the price isn't irrelevant, but like if you're building applications on top of it, you're not as concerned about what the price of Bitcoin is. You're concerned about like how many users are on there and like what is the purpose, and is this actually becoming valuable to other people? One application that I hope becomes more prominent in the next cycle, like voting on the blockchain, like permanently recording on an immutable ledger, maybe anonymizing it as well, obviously, but like making sure that there's no like what in the Iowa caucus thing, like there was like the shadow app that was funded by someone else, the Pete Buttigieg or whatever. It's like, all right, this is exactly why we need blockchain based voting and governance systems, so that we can like be sure that no one's being corrupt. So that's just like kind of one that's on a lot of people's minds, I guess, because there's always that election year craziness.
Right. Before we continue, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about our new sponsor, BetterHelp. As you know, we do everything we possibly can on the show to help people shift their perspectives to help them lead a healthy and happy life. That being said, sometimes we really just need someone to talk to directly that can help us navigate whatever challenge we're going through at that time. And if you're at that point in your life currently, BetterHelp makes this process super convenient by connecting you with a professional counselor in a safe and private environment, either on video, phone, or via text chats. BetterHelp has licensed therapists that specialize in almost any scenario you may be struggling with, such as depression, anxiety, grief, trauma, or relationship issues. And if you don't like the counselor you get assigned for any reason, you can request a new one at any time. Best of all, not only is it a convenient option, it's also affordable. And if you use the code POSITIVEHEAD, it's even more affordable because you get 10% off your first month. So if you're hearing this and you get the feeling that one of BetterHelp's 3,000 licensed therapists could help get you to where you want and deserve to be mentally, head over to betterhelp.com/positivehead and be sure to use the discount code POSITIVEHEAD, all one word, to get 10% off your first month. Very, very cool. So with your company, with DecentraNet, what is the sort of primary aim?
DecentraNet
there
kind of came about when I was leaving D10E. I had done, a number of different events, and I was getting all of these requests to be an advisor to whatever blockchain company or ICO or that was there. And I wanted to put that into like a formalized like entity and protect myself. And so I co-founded it with one of my good friends, Ted, who was also doing advising, but has like a really strong legal background, law school, SEC attorney, turned software entrepreneur, and was like, all right, well, let's do some advising, but like, let's make sure that we're not messing with like unlicensed securities and, let's keep ourselves out of legal harm. And he had just a tremendous amount of experience in this, like taking a small piece of a company and helping them grow, and being, the super helpful advisor and an investor, if it makes sense. And that was in kind of the blockchain space, but we're always focused on, the social impact or the impact angle of what this project would do to positively impact society if it was successful. And that's kind of where the transformative tech side of things comes, because there's blockchain, and blockchain's a tool, really, mostly. Like, eventually it's going to be like, I use the internet technology, of course I do. And so really interesting to see kind of the hemp and cannabis industry start growing, as well as like the psychedelic industry, as well as anything that I feel like is transformative and has a positive impact on society. My favorite, I guess, redefinition of a billionaire, right? It's not someone who has $1 billion. It's someone who positively affects the lives of 1 billion people or more. That is, that's my goal. I want to have, I want to have positive effect on 1 billion people or more, a positive transformative effect. And so helping these different companies and working on things is the way to do that. And so it took a lot of the two.
Yeah. It's the real ROI, ROI ripple of impact, right?
That's a cool way of saying it. I'll have to use that in the future.
Borrow that one. Yeah.
And so we basically, if anyone's interested, we kind of do we do a discovery call kind of thing, and we have a massive network of investors and advisors, and we have a lot of marketing and business development experience. And so we, if we like working with you guys and you're working on something that can really help the world, and it's a startup and there, or startup or greater, we're probably, the most helpful guys in the space, if you will.
Sweet. That's pretty exciting space to be in. So how does all this tie into, how do you, I know you're obviously, when we've talked about it some, a huge psychedelic advocate. How do you see these two worlds? You have a company, right? Crypto Psychedelics, where you make clothing that sort of mashes the two up. Is that right?
On the back of the events that we threw, it brought together people that were really interested in kind of like sovereignty of mind and like freeing your mind in a lot of ways, and sovereignty of finance. Like, how do we actually own our own money and our own types of systems? And it was a way of creating a community there that talked to each other. And then, from that, cryptopsychedelic.com, we're, it's been a couple of years since we did that, but we converted it into a web store, and we want to essentially do more art around this, where we take, a blockchain concept that's really abstract, or, there, and we can find, psychedelic visionary artists to kind of create some sort of piece of art around it, and then donate a
Cool.
portion of it to psychedelic science research of the profits. Um, and so like so the site's up, you can buy t-shirts on there, and in my free time, hopefully one of these days we'll be able to grow that and get some more artists that want to create stuff on there and sell it, and believe in that. And I mean, just psychedelics in general, I think, are going to have the most upgrading of consciousness that we've seen in almost all of humanity. Like, just talking about, like, yes, like the big I say the big exposures to it, the big doses to it, yes, are really positive. But like the micro doses, and when that becomes kind of a legal thing in society, and we're already seeing a lot of people doing it, like self kind of microdosing. But like,
For sure.
imagine
Yeah.
there's 50 million people in the United States actively taking a microdose of psilocybin every 3 days. Like, what does that do to human consciousness?
Yeah. 50, yeah, like a fifth or sixth of the
Right.
population on slightly on mushrooms
Right.
every
It's
day.
not,
That's
and
an
it's like
interesting concept.
sub-perceptual, but Paul Stamets has been talking about, it's neurogenic, so you're actually making crazy amounts of new connections. It's, it increases your emotional intelligence over time, and so like you're better
Yeah.
leaders, you're there for other people, and so like, and you're more creative, you're more able to be, your heart rate variability goes up, where you're able to adapt to new and different things, which is and so, like, I don't know, like in the next 5 years, I can totally see that being something that massively changes society, and no one's actually even getting high. Uh, they're
Right. Yeah, that's the important thing for any of you out there who aren't familiar. Like, microdosing is not. It's like taking a very small dose, so
right.
not even perceptible that you've taken anything that would, in a higher dose certainly give you
And
a very
that's
different
kind of
experience.
like Paul Stamets put out, like, microdose.me is the app that you can download. And so if people are doing that, then they can record what they're doing and how they're like, record every single day. There's and I'm sure there's plenty of other types of apps and companies. There's also like a company called Emotional Intelligence Ventures, EI Ventures, that's out of
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii. That I've talked to the founder a couple of different times, and really excited for it's a psilocybin analog, but it has some of the same like emotional intelligence benefits. And they want to make 1 billion doses and hand out as many of them for free as possible, right? And go through the legal
Wow.
DEA registered process and everything. But like,
Right.
there's not a lot of hallucinations in it. But if you put it in your water in the morning instead of coffee, and you were up and alert and focused, but you were also getting neurogenic and emotional intelligence benefits, like, that can transform societies really quickly.
Well, it's really interesting to see, like the decriminalization that's happening with mushrooms, psilocybin, I believe Oakland recently, right here in California. So it should be really interesting to see if that is now the next wave behind, the sort of marijuana, decriminalization that's happened
I
in
mean,
recent
there's
years.
like decriminalized. So like, I guess Denver had decriminalized the mushrooms, and then Oakland had decriminalized nature. So like, a lot of just the plants that are there, they're just not bothering it. And that's been grown to like Dallas and Chicago, and like really big jurisdictions are taking a look at decriminalizing nature, which is a crazy concept.
Anything that's naturally grows, like you're not,
Yeah, it's like
basically
saying,
is what
okay,
that
well,
means.
if you grew some ibogaine, or you grew some plants that contained some DMT, or you grew some ayahuasca vine, or you grew some mushrooms, like for like peyote, and Oakland specifically is really like next level, taking a look at like what does it actually look like to give real care for this to the community, and what do they need
Yeah.
to like actually
Right.
reap the benefits of this. Like obviously you need integration, you need to be able to have like self-sustaining, like you can't just be like,
Yep.
it doesn't seem right that if you're giving someone a dose of this and then they're just going back to a really terrible environment, because that's not going to help them
Right.
get out of what's going on. So they need to have the basic needs met. Um, but they're looking at like, what does it actually look like to be responsible, and give. And a lot of it's also a nonprofit context, where like people like are forming either benefit corps or nonprofits, essentially to do this. So there's not that kind of pharmaceuticalized profit making, like,
Right.
all
Right.
right,
Right.
well, I'm going to put 50K into this, and then
Agenda.
hopefully I can 10x or 100x my investment, and then it
Yep.
degrades the actual medicinal or transformative value. um,
I love the perspective of
right, like
decriminalizing nature. What a concept, right? It's like, okay, we're going to stop saying that it's evil what the universe has put here, right? It doesn't mean it's not powerful, and it doesn't require some discernment, and obviously there's a lot of things in nature that can harm you or kill you or whatever, but especially when you take these things like these plant medicines that have shown to have incredible benefit, and those, they're made, illegal or classified with like, as this hardcore, classified with like methamphetamine
heroin,
or something, it's like, yeah, exactly. So it's really, it's
right,
very
and
logical.
yeah, and that's not legalizing everything. It's not saying every go out, but it's just saying like, all right, if you had a small personal amount of whatever this is and you were taking it in nature, like the local authorities are not going to go after you and worry about this, because it's not something that they should be worried
Right.
about. And I mean, who knows what the
Right.
federal authorities end up doing in a lot of these places, but like, you feel like they have better things to worry about, in society. I guess like part of that, talk a little bit about the other company that I'm working on, if that works out in this context. So AMMA
Sure.
Healing, AMMAhealing.co is our plant-based hemp-derived wellness company. And this is kind of like the foray, because I really wanted to get involved in this space in a real way, and like build a company and build a brand and build a story about how these plant medicines are coming back into our society, and we're reintegrating them. And so the easiest one, I hadn't had a really big like CBD experience. I thought it was kind of bullshit, actually. And then,
Fluffy.
I got a chance to try this like cold extraction, like preserving the plant intelligence as much as possible, type of stuff out of Colorado. And I was like, oh, this is what it feels like. You feel kind of centered and relaxed. And like, I was like hiking and working out, and like the next day I was just not sore. I was like, what is going on here? And so we took AMMA. AMMA means like grandmother in a lot of Latin American cultures, and it's kind of this rise of the divine feminine, where there's like, where it's like you are perfect the way that you are, and you just sometimes need a little bit of help to like realize how perfect you are as a person, instead of this kind of male dominated thing where like performance, like, well, take this because you're broken and I need to fix you, kind of mentality. And so,
Right.
with our products and what we do, we have 0.0% THC, like all gone, but all the other 30 plus cannabinoids and 40 plus terpenes and the plant intelligence that your body has a natural built-in chemical relationship with. And so like most of
that's an important point, I think, for people who don't know much about this, is that we have receptors, already inside of us that are made for this, all this stuff, right?
Yeah. We have an endocannabinoid system, and Jamie Wheel is one of our advisors, Stealing Fire and all this stuff. And he gave this riveting talk at our launch party, and he described the history of like the endocannabinoid system. And this system within living beings is like hundreds of millions of years old. It's crazy. And we just discovered it in the mid 1990s as like a biological system within us. And only like 10 to 15% of med schools still teach it exists.
Wow. That's crazy.
And so like, we're still really just trying to understand like, what is this relationship with this hemp plant that we've that we've cultivated. And like a lot of the commercial or pharmaceuticalization of CBD in general is also, it's not a good trend in that sense. Like just taking CBD by itself, the reason why that's the thing that's being sold the most is because it's the most abundant in the plant. It's the cheapest and easiest to extract. And so, and then most of the time in those extraction methodologies, they use heat and solvent intensive processes, which basically denature and destroy everything that's good for you. And you're just getting this like weird denatured like one molecule, and it doesn't take into account that ancient wisdom mixed with like the modern technology.
Right.
And so, as a wellness company, we want to have like effective doses, right? We want to make sure that whatever is being taken by the people is actually providing an effective dose to help them in a way. So we have like our salve. Like I've seen people, and this is like all of the things that I'm saying here is kind of like my, like, especially anecdotal, is like my opinion and not statements of the company in a lot of ways.
Right.
But like I've seen people where they rub some, like they were in a car accident, right? 3-6 months ago, and they're not able to move their head around, and then they rub some of it on their neck, and they're able to like nod, and they're like, oh my God, this is actually like completely changed my life. And so that type of like story is the thing that I like. It just brings like such gratitude to my being, because I'm like, all right, I know this is actually helping people in a really big way.
Right. Yeah, that's a rewarding feeling to make a difference in someone's life who is suffering, right?
Yeah, the positive impact, right? As we talked about, the ROI, the ripples.
Right, ripples of impact.
The ripples of impact.
You had your brain, we were talking before we started recording, you had your brain scanned on DMT. Tell me about that. That sounds very interesting.
Right. So I was at a DMT conference at the assemblage in New York. So like Graham Hancock and Dennis McKenna and Daniel Pinchbeck, who just wrote When Plants Dream, were there, and it was a 10-hour conference on DMT and society and history of it, which I hope that there's more DMT conferences in the world as this becomes a big thing. So I met one of the researchers at Imperial College, and he talked about his study where they were doing EEGs on people, and then he said, well,
can you real quick just tell people who don't know DMT?
Yeah, dimethyltryptamine. So dimethyltryptamine is the active ingredient in ayahuasca. It's in a lot of different other types of
in nature,
like
almost in you,
right? And a lot of evidence supports that it's produced inside of your brain, especially probably when dreaming, and meditating and getting to those types of states. But they've never done these types of studies, so I I went up and got to talk to him, and I was like, all right, look, I know you hear this all the time, but like, I volunteer as tribute, right? Like, if you need another guy to go into the MRI machine in your second study, like, I'm your guy.
Kind of like the book, The Spirit Molecule, or they also did a documentary on it as well. If you guys want to see, it's all about, DMT studies.
Yeah, Rick Strassman in the 90s, he wrote DMT, The Spirit Molecule, and then they did a documentary on it with, that was a really cool, amazing book.
Yeah.
But so, and that was just doing it in like a lab setting and measuring like heart rate and breathing and making sure it was kind of whatever they could do in the 90s. But yeah, I got to go to Imperial College. I got to get all the kind of EEG stuff on my head. I got to go into the MRI machine, get hooked up to a candula, and laying in this bed, and they have earbuds in there, and they have ear muffs. I think there's a whole show that we could just do on this experience. And so the big kind of moment was, you don't know whether you're getting placebo or DMT at the time. So there are ended up being 4 sessions. And you don't know, ended up being two and two, but you don't know prior. So you're laying in there, and they do like a meditation with you. So make sure you're like calm, cool, collected. Although my heart rate was probably like 120, 130.
It's a powerful substance.
And and you're laying there, like, you can't see anything. You're hearing the loud noises, and then inside, and this is what I want to create into some sort of like dubstep song. But there's a recording where the researcher goes, "The dose will begin now." And then you feel a cold rush of liquid up your arm, and within 10 to 15 seconds you're feeling, either you're going to sit there for 20 minutes and nothing's going to happen, or you're completely in a different channel or different universe. There was a recent article about this that I wanted to mention, and I can send it to you for like the show notes. It's called "How DMT Switches the Brain's Reality Channel," by Dr. Andrew Gallimore. And so really interesting article that talks about this. But yeah, so went through all of that process, and then afterwards they do an exit interview, and they like ask you like, okay, what were you feeling? What were you seeing? All that kind of stuff. And eventually I want to create t-shirts once I get the images and say, "This is your brain on DMT," right? With like the drug war thing, but like an actual image of a brain on DMT.
Right.
So,
wow.
Yeah, that's and like I said, there's so much more detail to that story of like going through the process, but the quick 5-minute little blurb on it, and I can't wait for the study results to come out. Like the preliminary stuff shows that it's like from the EEGs shows that it's a similar to dreaming states in the delta and theta waves. So.
Gotcha.
We'll see what the actual scans say, and what our brains do when they're switching to a different channel of the universe.
Right. And of course, for those of you who are, it's like completely foreign to them, it's a lot of people have experiences that are completely like, multidimensional kind of, interaction with non-physical entities. I just looked it up way back in the early days of Positive Head. I interviewed Mitch Schultz, who was the director of the documentary, The Spirit Molecule. So if you guys want to go back to go on to positivehead.com, search episode 64. Wow. You can find all the archives there. So
super early. Yeah, they call it in the entities, they call them sense presences in the scientific literature, and I just thought that was a cool terminology. Oh yeah, I sensed a presence for sure.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Yeah, I know in Spirit Molecule there was like a high percentage, like 75% of people had that sort of experience, if I recall.
Yeah.
So
definitely entities, whether they're in your brain or in a different reality. There's definitely different types of entity things that you learn. They talk to you, and I mean, much like in dreams, there's lots of entities that people and things. That
do you want to share? I mean, did you have a particular learning or interaction that was powerful during
your first one? So intentions are really important. And that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I took out of this. So the first session, my intentions were to surrender completely,
Mm-hmm.
and to forward psychedelic science. So I wanted to make sure I didn't move. I wanted to like really just go through the process, and have the experience. And in that experience, I felt like it was the first kind of DMT experience that I had ever had where I didn't feel like warm and loving and caring. I felt like there was like
Mm.
a house of horrors kind of glass in between me and
Ooh.
the warmth and the rest of the space, and I was like having to look through it. Could also be the product of being inside of an MRI machine, right? I don't know.
Yeah, right.
um but the second time I set another intention, which was to have a warm and loving uh,
Yeah.
experience, and to forward psychedelic science and surrender completely, and that made it just so much thing. So I would just say, like, no matter where you are, set and setting are important, all those types of things. Like, uh, intentions are just as powerful as the experience itself.
Warm and loving.
Mm-hmm.
The key there. So as we kind of wind down here, one of the things that I always like, as we get into a little bit of story time, I always love to hear a story of synchronicity or serendipity or a positive paranormal story. You have anything like that up your sleeve that jumps out to share?
Yeah, I would just say, like, I mean, I feel like we've talked about a lot of positive paranormal experiences. I would just say that the more that you become the more that I've become meditative, and more that I've become conscious, the more that you kind of look and see synchronicities, or you see connections between things, and you can do them. Um, the biggest one that had, like, in the early days of my life, that had an experience was I was sitting in the library, studying, and I was thinking about different people and consciousness and what it meant in the world. And the people that I was thinking about, uh, they ended up texting me, like, right there and
Oh,
then,
well.
like, every time. And I was like, oh man, like, from a physics, like, thoughts are definitely forces here. Like, we're
Yeah.
not describing it. And so that was like one of the biggest, like, turning points in my, like, undergrad and my kind of philosophical understanding of the world, where I was like, all right, there's something to this consciousness stuff, and we just don't know how to mathematically model it. And that was like one of the first real serendipitous or synchronicity events of my life. Just thinking about people and then having them text me, like,
Right.
nearly in that 5 minutes kind of thing.
Yeah. It's pretty cool when you start realizing that you know, we're all intertwined and that consciousness is not local.
No.
And your brain is really a receiver of consciousness, as Nassim Haramein kind of put it.
Yeah.
And
I,
sort of like a radio.
And people are, mapping this kind of stuff. One other thing I'll mention is the Qualia Research Institute has a really interesting new mathematical model for mapping all of consciousness, and then their goal is to end human suffering with it. So if people check it out, the Qualia Research Institute, I won't go into, like, I don't think I could describe their mathematical model. So, but
Yeah, right.
they're really smart dudes.
Cool. Yeah. It sounds interesting. Well, this has been epic, Matt. Thank you so much for all you're doing in the world, and you're juggling quite a bit, and certainly on the forefront of expanding human consciousness, and sort of helping to usher us into the next era, I believe, with using plant medicines and using things like blockchain and crypto to even the playing field, if you will, for people who are interested in possibly connecting with you, or even maybe getting some of your healing products through AMMA. What's the best way for them to find you and do that?
So you can email me at matt@ammahealing.co, and then ammahealing.co is the website, and we actually created a discount code and everything for your listeners. So if you use the code positive, you'll get a 15% discount. And we're coming out with some cool products in the next month, where, like, alcohol replacement kind of, it's called Elevate, where you're going to be able to have an elevated buzz, but no alcohol and nothing that's like harming your body. So,
oh, cool. I love that. And that's AMMA is AMMA and then healing.co.
Yeah, AMMA healing.co. Absolutely. And Matt at AMMAhealing.co. You can send me an email. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn as well. Matt McKibbin. There's not that many of those out there in the world. So you can
Awesome. Well, I do have one last question for you here, Matt, and it is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Matt McKibbin?
The meaning of life according to Matt McKibbin. The meaning of life is to realize that you are conscious, loving awareness, and to get other people to feel, to know and understand that as well.
Beautiful. Well said, my friend. Yeah. Thank you for all that you do in the world. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. All of you guys out there listening, thank you for tuning in as always. Until next time, journey well. Love you all so much. And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat-style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talkwithbrandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.